It's that time of the year once again. The time where the 2021 season is about to begin and everybody is making their playoff predictions, who's going to win the championship, who's going to be a first time winner. All that I will do in due time. But for today's video, first of all, we are going to discuss who are the top 10, of course in my opinion, the top 10 Cup drivers entering the 2021 season. However, the way I do my rankings is very different from the way NASCAR does its power rankings. These are not power rankings. This is of course my opinion, and the way I do these rankings is that I take into account not only the drivers' 2020 season, I also take into account their entire body of work in recent years. So for example, if you won the championship, that doesn't mean that you're going to be the number one driver entering the season. And of course, likewise, if you had a bad season, but you were like a top 3 driver, then that means that you're not going to be falling that far in my list. You're going to be losing a few spots, but you're not going to be falling out the top 5 if your body of work before that bad season is pretty good. So with that out of the way, let's begin. So at number 1, I have the driver that scored a career high 9 wins last season. I'm talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, of course, just because he didn't win the championship, that doesn't discredit the season that he had. Of course, it would have been good for him to close out the best season of his career with a win. But of course, sometimes stuff happens. He fell apart in the playoffs. But even then, even if he's not going to repeat that same performance from last season, this performance actually, the season that he had, coupled with his entire body of work in these past seasons and how he has been so consistent for an entire decade. Actually, he has finished, I believe, top 10 in points ever since 2010. He's running an 11-year streak of finishing top 10 in points every season, which in my opinion is pretty nuts, especially for a driver that is entering the latter half of his 40s. For him to be so consistent and still being considered, in my opinion, he enters this season as the best driver. Do I think he'll win the championship? No, in large part because he will not win 9 races again. There's gonna be practice and qualifying. That's the other thing. Harvick took advantage of practice, of no practice and no qualifying, and for that, I think also the fact that he didn't win the championship, he doesn't have as much momentum as somebody like Chase Elliott who did. That of course is going to affect him. But as of right now, as of the one day before the clash begins, because that's when I'm recording this. I'm recording this video in the day before the clash. So as of right now, I consider Harvick the number 1 driver, at least until something drastic happens, but that's just how it is right now. So number 2 is the other driver that had a career season. Is of course Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin last season, he clearly was the best driver for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he has actually been for quite some time in that conversation. Of course, many people forget in 2019 because he didn't win the championship, and of course because Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole in 2019 was pretty good. But in 2019, Denny Hamlin, especially in the second half of 2019, most specifically in the playoffs, Denny Hamlin had an argument that he had actually surpassed Kyle Busch as the best driver in Joe Gibbs Racing, because if you remember, in the 2019 playoffs, Kyle Busch had several moments where it looked like he was falling apart, but of course he didn't. And Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. were winning a lot of races. I believe Hamlin won 2 races in the playoffs and Truex won 3 in 2019. So there was definitely a conversation to be had about who the best driver in Joe Gibbs Racing was. Of course, Kyle Busch ended up winning the championship in 2019, so of course he was the best driver in Joe Gibbs Racing that season. But in 2020, with Kyle Busch just having a bad season and Hamlin and Truex not scoring as many wins, even though he was consistent, Hamlin, he really rose to the forefront as the man that carried the torch for Joe Gibbs Racing. As the only Toyota driver that made it to the Championship 4 and the only Gibbs driver that made it to the Championship 4. He was basically the only Gibbs driver that contended for wins that season. But of course, as it is almost a tradition at this point, Hamlin just didn't have the speed to close out, just didn't have enough to close the deal, and he enters the 2021 season once again without a title. Now, again, just like Harvick, I don't think Hamlin will win the 2021 championship because he's coming off one of the best seasons of his career. He won 7 races, and yet he didn't win the championship. So of course, I expect that to have a negative impact on his momentum. But he's still gonna be around, just like Harvick. Hamlin is still gonna be around. He's still gonna be a threat for Championship 4 contention. And if things go right for him, he can actually walk off with the championship. But you always gotta wonder, how many years does Hamlin have left in the tank for him to close out the deal? Because he's on the wrong side of 40 and Father Time is waiting to strike. Coming in at number 3 is the driver that last season, entering the 2020 season, was considered the best driver, the number 1 driver in NASCAR, but because of the bad season that he had, he falls down to number 3. He's not even the best guy. I don't even consider him the best guy on his team right now. Number 3 is Kyle Busch. Now, of course, there's actually a bit of a conversation between who the best driver at Joe Gibbs Racing is, between Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Of course, right now I'm picking Denny Hamlin because he has been a very consistent number 2 guy alongside Kyle Busch. There has been times where he has actually looked like the number 1 guy, and 2020 season was one of them. Kyle Busch in 2020, he didn't even look like the number 2 guy in 2020. He was more like the 3rd guy in 2020 behind Hamlin and Truex. And of course, this mostly has to do with the fact that 2020 was a pandemic season. It was a season that was out of the ordinary. No practice, no qualifying. That really took a toll on not only on Kyle Busch but on half the NASCAR teams as a whole. But let's focus on Kyle Busch for a moment. Of course, the lack of practice and qualifying, like I said, it really didn't help. But it also doesn't help the fact that entering this season, Kyle Busch will no longer have Adam Stevens as his crew chief. And this is going to be big because many people expected Kyle Busch to have a comeback season and for him to make the Championship 4 and possibly win it. But now without Adam Stevens, and not only that, he also has his new crew chief is an largely unproven Xfinity Series crew chief named Ben Beshore. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but as of right now, I don't think very highly of this signing. I would rather give Kyle Busch and Adam Stevens one more season to see if they can turn things around. Because that's the thing. This was the first bad season that Kyle Busch had with Adam Stevens. And it wasn't even a bad season. It was more of a championship hangover, if anything, because he still managed to score like 14 top 5s. He still managed to score 20 top 10s. Of course, it was inconsistent and he only won 1 race, but 14 top 5s and 20 top 10s, those are some pretty good stats, and he still managed to secure a top 10 finishing points. Of course, he didn't make it as deep into the playoffs as he had before, but I mean, just one bad season and you separate Kyle Busch and Adam Stevens? Of course, I still think Kyle Busch can make it to the Championship 4, but without Adam Stevens, I don't know if he can win it. I still expect him to have a comeback year, but let's see how far Ben Beshore can take this 18 team now that he is the new man manning the boat. Coming in at number 4 is the defending series champion Chase Elliott. I had a bit of in the off season I had a bit of a debate about who to put at number 4, because the discussion about number 4, number 5, number 6, it was pretty tight. But of course, eventually I decided to give the nod to Elliott because, of course, he's the defending series champion. And if you are the defending series champion, you will most likely be a top 5 driver in the Cup Series. So of course, I had to give the number 4 spot to Elliott, not only because of recency and stuff like that, but also because the 2021 season is expected to be a breakout season for Chase Elliott, which is pretty crazy to say because Chase Elliott is coming off of a championship, and I mean, a championship is your breakout season, but of course the 2021 season is still expected to be one of the best seasons of Elliott's career because of the additions of road courses. NASCAR is going to be running at 7 road courses next season. Also, Hendrick Motorsports and RCR, they are going to combine their Chevrolet operations. So now Chevrolet will be an alliance between Hendrick and RCR. There's going to be this big alliance between Hendrick and RCR in the Chevrolet camp, which is of course not only going to benefit Elliott, but it's also going to benefit all of the Chevrolet teams in general. Talking about Hendrick, Ganassi, RCR. Of course, the biggest beneficiary of this will be Elliott himself because he is the best Chevy driver. So with all these factors in play, I believe that Elliott can not only have a great season, but I believe he can also go back-to-back. He can win back-to-back championships, which will be a first in this elimination-style playoff format. I actually talked about this on my Chase Elliott analysis video that I did a few days ago. That I believe, as of right now, Elliott can go back-to-back because of all these factors. And I'm still not shying away from that opinion. I firmly believe right now that Elliott has all the things going in his favor to repeat as Cup Series champion. So as I said, number 4, number 5, and number 6 was pretty tight between Chase Elliott and of course the 2 Penske guys. In the end, I decided to give number 5 to Brad Keselowski because of the season he had. Not only did Keselowski was the best Penske driver, but also the circumstances surrounding that 2020 season with Keselowski, with nobody knowing what will happen to Keselowski after 2020. Many speculating that Keselowski will leave Penske after 2020. Many speculating that Keselowski might take over the 48 after Jimmy Johnson retires. Keselowski, Brad just won 4 races and finished second in the points, while clearly being Team Penske's best and most consistent driver. He still proved that he has a few good seasons left in the tank, and he also proved that he still belongs in Penske. And with Austin Cindric now going to the Wood Brothers number 21, it's safe to say that even though this is just a 1-year extension, I believe that Keselowski will be back at Team Penske for another year. For another 1 or 2 years at least. At least until Austin Cindric decides to take over the 2, because that's been the plan. I feel that has been the plan for quite a few years now. But as of right now, I will keep Keselowski in the 2. He has done a pretty good job. Like carrying the torch for Penske, and I believe he's gonna keep doing it. until he finally breaks down. Now, like I said earlier, number 6 is the other Penske guy, Joey Logano. Logano is a pretty interesting case because he has the potential to be a top 5 driver in the sport, but the only thing holding him back from that is his regular season success, because we all know that Joey Logano turns it up in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he has this tendency to win 1 or 2 races early on in the season, and then for the second half of the regular season, he just tends to coast, get a few top 5s and top 10s here and there. And in this playoff format, where playoff points actually matter from the regular season, of course, Joey Logano can turn it up in the playoffs and score top 5s and top 10s in the first 2 rounds. But when it comes down to the round of 8, because of the lack of playoff points compared to his competitors, Joey Logano has always been put in a situation where he's almost always forced to win, because otherwise those top 5s and top 10s can only carry you so far. And Logano has actually done a pretty good job at that. I mean, he's been able to make the championship 4 in 3 out of the past 5 years. And there's also this trend that he is making it to the championship 4 once every other year. And 2021 is supposed to be the year where Joey Logano would not make the championship 4. So take that for whatever you will. I do not believe in trends. I do not think that this means that Joey Logano will miss the championship 4 this season. But of course, it's still pretty interesting to see what will the result be and if the trend will continue. It's always fun to see that. But in terms of that, of course, Joey Logano, you think that with Joey Logano turning it up in the playoffs, you think that I will be ranking him higher. But since I take into account the driver's entire body of work throughout the season, I just cannot do that. Especially when I look at the other 5 drivers ahead of him, all of them deserve to be in the top 5 more than Logano, because not only do they have playoff success, they've also had regular season success, and that actually matters. That actually matters to me in the grand scheme of things when making this list. Now at number 7, this is actually going to be a bit controversial, but I got Martin Truex Jr. at number 7. Now of course, I know what you guys are all thinking. Truex actually had a pretty... Many people say that Truex have a pretty underrated season, in that, yeah, he only won 1 race, but he had 14 top 5s, 23 top 10s, and he was pretty consistent for most of the way. And like, yeah, I get that, and I also get that Truex could have had more than 1 win. Truex could have won like 3 to 4 races if a few things went right for him. I understand that, but at the same time, this shows that Truex 2020 season shows that he really needs Cole Pearn. Like, what's this guy's name? James Small. James Small is a good crew chief, but he is not on the level of Cole Pearn. Like Martin Truex Jr., Cole Pearn was the game changer for not only for the 19 team, but for Martin Truex Jr. as a whole. And of course, well, I believe that Truex has a few good seasons left in him because he's driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. Like Denny Hamlin, how many seasons does Truex have left in the tank? And also, unlike someone like Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. has not proven that he can win without Cole Pearn. How many wins has Martin Truex Jr. won without Cole Pearn? Like only 2 of them. Only 2 of them that I can remember from the top of my head. So yeah, without Cole Pearn, Truex hasn't done much. With Cole Pearn, Truex is a champion. Of course, that doesn't mean that I'm discrediting Truex in any way, shape, or form. I'm not using this to slander Truex in any way, shape, or form, but that's just how it is. That's just how things go. And that's just It is what it is. That's all I'm gonna say. It's the reality of the situation. Truex has not proven to me that he can win, or that he can at the very least compete for championships without Cole Pern. So until he can prove that to me, he's not going to be a top driver to me. I consider him a dark horse driver at best. And to those of you who say that Truex is going for a comeback season, I don't think he will. I do not think Martin Truex Jr. is underrated. Martin Truex Jr. is not underrated to me. He's just properly rated where he is right now. I don't think he is. I stand by that. I don't think he is underrated. So coming in at number 8 is, in my opinion, the most underrated active Cup Series driver, Kurt Busch. Now, similar to Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch had a season where he proved a lot of people wrong. Many people thought that Kurt Busch was slowing down, that he was close to retiring, and that of course many people thought that he will go winless and that he will be eliminated in the round of 16 or round of 12. Similar to last season, of course. Last season really tipped the balance in what many people thought of Kurt Busch. Not last season, like 2019. 2019, due to the bad season that Kurt Busch had, the bad playoff run that he had, many people thought that 2020 will be like a slow year for him, like a down year, and that 2021, this season, will eventually be his retirement tour. But of course, that didn't happen. 2020, Kurt Busch he scored an improbable win at Las Vegas, along with 7 top 5s and 19 top 10s. And not only that, he was also very consistent throughout the regular season. That was the most surprising part. He was like staying in the, of course he didn't score a lot of stage points, but he was staying right there in the thick of things for the whole season. And even though he was making it to the playoffs some points, with the way he was running, you just felt that he had that he wasn't in any danger. You could just feel it, that Kurt Busch was not going to be eliminated because of the way he was running, because of how consistent he was. He was scoring top 10s just every other race, the occasional top 5. Then of course he scored that win at Las Vegas, ascending to round of 8. All of this, of course, this was also a surprising season for Kurt Busch. And this, along with his body of work in recent years, not only is Kurt Busch number 8 on my list, but he is also, in my opinion, the most underrated driver in the Cup Series as of right now. Number 9 is a driver that has a lot of potential, but he just can't seem to put it all together. I'm talking about the third Penske guy in Ryan Blaney. 2020 was supposed to be a big season for Ryan Blaney, especially after he was coming off the best season of his career in 2019, having made it to the round of 8 and actually being more consistent than he was in 2018. Many people expected that 2020 will be Ryan Blaney's best season, and after he started off the season hot and he signed a contract extension with a multi-year extension with Team Penske, many people thought that Ryan Blaney was going to be Team Penske's next big thing. Not to mention, he also has Todd Gordon, a championship winning crew chief, now on top of the helm instead of Jeremy Bullins on top of the pit box. And of course, for the first few weeks of the season before the pandemic started, Blaney was of course having a lot of great runs. If a few things went right for him, Ryan Blaney could have started out the season with 3 straight wins. But of course, it just wasn't meant to be. Ryan Blaney had a lot of moments where he was so unlucky. But at the same time, he also had moments where he shot himself in the foot several times. And none of them were more evident than in the playoffs. As soon as the playoffs started, Ryan Blaney was hit with a 10-point penalty, which means that instead of starting above the cut line, he had to start the playoffs below the cut line, despite having won a race. And unfortunately, the team never recovered from this. They failed to finish on the lead lap in all 3 of those races. They failed to score a single top 10. And because of that, Ryan Blaney got a disappointing early elimination. However, after he was eliminated, funnily enough, Ryan Blaney had some pretty good runs to close out the season. But of course, a lot of people are not paying attention to that because this is exactly what happened in 2019. This is exactly what happened in 2019 and 2018. Ryan Blaney, of course, he has a fast start to the season. Then as the season goes on, he is inconsistent. But then, to close out the season, towards the end of the season, in the playoffs, Ryan Blaney, he turns it up once again, and people are once again hyped up for the positive momentum he created heading into next season. And then what happens? The same story repeats itself. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Ryan Blaney is... Now, of course, I'm not doing this to just spite any Ryan Blaney fans out there. But that's just the reality of the situation. In that Ryan Blaney, he always does the same thing, and until Ryan Blaney proves that he can do more with what he's given, I just cannot put him over any of these guys. I'm gonna say Ryan Blaney is a bit of a disappointment, but not by much. I really don't want to write him off so quickly because, again, we can only hope. 2021 is a new season. Let's see how it goes for Ryan Blaney. But if this season is basically a repeat of 2019 or 2020, where he only wins one race and is knocked out early in the playoffs and is pretty much inconsistent, then of course we're gonna have to start questioning whether Ryan Blaney deserves to be in that 12 car. Because at this point, time is running out for him. And I know he signed a multi-year deal with Penske, but if he doesn't perform, maybe Roger Penske will want to rethink. Maybe Roger Penske will want to think twice about putting Blaney on that 12 long term. So at number 10, it's pretty interesting. There are a few drivers that you could put there at number 10. There's of course Aric Almirola, who is coming off the best season of his career. But because of the playoff bubble being competitive and Aric Almirola not really going out for wins, he is just playing it safe for points. There's actually an argument to be had that Aric Almirola could actually miss the playoffs, and I don't want to put a top 10 driver that has a chance of missing the playoffs in this list, so I'm not gonna do that. There's also William Byron, who is coming off of his first career win in 2020. But he's still ways off of that list. There's still a few drivers that I consider better than Byron as of right now. There's also Kyle Larson, which is the biggest wild card of 2020. But of course, I want to wait and see how he performs. Kyle Larson is a driver that could either just tear it up in Hendrick equipment, or he could do really bad and struggle a lot. Either way, whether Larson does really good or really bad, it wouldn't surprise me. He is a wild card after all. So the driver that I am going to put at number 10 is a driver that, just like Chase Elliott, is looking out for a breakout season. And he is actually the fourth Hendrick driver that I haven't discussed yet. Number 10 is the new driver of the 48, Alex Bowman. And the reason why Alex Bowman is number 10, I have a few reasons, and they're pretty simple. Number 1, Alex Bowman had a pretty under the radar 2020 season, especially in the playoffs. He made it to round of 8, which was pretty unexpected, And even though he wasn't nowhere near to making it to the championship 4, he actually put up a great string of very consistent top 5 and top 10 finishes. So that of course is important because it actually builds up some positive momentum for next season. Also, like I said with Chase Elliott earlier, Hendrick and RCR are going to be unifying their Chevrolet operations, which means that every Chevrolet driver is going to be given a big boost in their performance. And of course, Alex Bowman being a Chevrolet driver is one of them, so we are expecting Alex Bowman to improve next season. But the most important thing, however, is that Alex Bowman is the new driver of the 48. He is driving the legendary 48 car, the number that Jimmy Johnson made famous. And as far as I know, the 48 car hasn't changed at all. The only thing that changed, of course, is the driver and the crew chief. But everything else, like the engine builder, the chassis builder, the pit crew, everything else is the same. The only additions to the 48 car are Alex Bowman as the driver and Greg Ives as the crew chief. And this is of course really important because Cliff Daniels, no disrespect to him, but Cliff Daniels is not the crew chief that Greg Ives is. And they're replacing an old retiring Jimmy Johnson with a younger, more proven Alex Bowman. And all of these factors, of course, I have to factor, of course, momentum into consideration. The future projections matter, of course. So that's why in 2021, I believe that Alex Bowman will have a breakout season. And that's why I got him at number 10 on this list. And so we have reached the end of the video. Damn, this video is 30 minutes long. I should start making a podcast. So anyways, leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment down below what you think of my top 10 list. Of course, you can also do your top 10 list down below, and we can start a discussion there. And of course, most importantly, subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about future uploads. The 2021 season is almost here. The Clash is tomorrow, and I am so hyped because that means that I'm gonna be creating a lot of content for you guys, and I am excited. So of course, until next time, peace out.